Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Would you spend 30% of your monthly collections on marketing? Postcards, pay-per-click, things of that nature. So if you collected $150,000 a month, would you spend $45,000 of that on marketing? I'm going to wager that's a big no. And the reason I bring that up is if you have a lot of involvement, if you're in network with a lot of PPOs, that's essentially what it is that you're doing. So in this week's episode of Dental Business RX, we're going to talk about insurance plans. And specifically, is it possible to really get out of, to drop insurance plans? My name is Jeff Bloomberg. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here at MGE, and I am your host. So let me just clarify something before I get into this whole subject. What I want to talk about today is, can you get out? What happens if you do? We've had quite a few clients do it. And what causes doctors to end up in these things? And I want to also clarify before I get started, when I say dropping insurance plans, I don't mean necessarily not accepting assignment. I mean, that's fine. We have clients who don't accept assignment. We also have clients who aren't in network, but they'll file a patient's insurance for them. That's a personal decision. And I'm a big fan of you getting the compensation for what you're actually worth, truly having a fee-for-service practice. And on that subject, the fee-for-service practice, it's an interesting thing. You've probably heard of the MGE New Patient Workshop. I'm not saying that to plug it, although if you want to check it out, go to newpatients.net. But the MGE New Patient Workshop, you've probably heard of it. It's a course we've been offering for a long, long time. And the way we used to market this course was create a fee-for-service practice, have a fee-for-service practice. That was, or get more fee-for-service new patients. That was the marketing taglines that we used. And then I noticed in the mid-2000s that the amount of responses we were getting from our marketing was starting to drop. So I'm wondering what's going on, It had been working for years. So I started talking to dentists, not clients, but just, dentists out there at various functions and on the phone and whatnot. And what I found was when you would tell a doctor, have a fee-for-service practice, they thought it sounded cool, but impossible. In other words, if I were to tell you, hey, would you like to fly? Sure, I'd love to fly. It's impossible, but, sure. Sounds great. In other words, too idealized. It's not going to happen. So we were marketing into that sort of weird void in where people thought that what we were marketing was basically impossible. So we switched our marketing up a bit and we started to get a better response. So what was interesting about this whole fee-for-service idea kind of, died for a little bit. Then 2020 happened. 2020 happens. So you had a lot of people who were just shut down, depending on where you're listening to this from or where your practice is. In Florida, doctors were shut down for a little more than a month, only doing emergency care. I think in New York City, I think it was close till almost 2.5, 3 months from March to July, late March, early April to July. So you had a lot of doctors sitting, at home or maybe in their office with no patients. And, because they could never get out of these managed care plans. They could never drop them. They had to keep them. They had to keep doing it. And they're wondering all of a sudden, these plans that they absolutely couldn't live without, well, they weren't seeing any patients anyway, so maybe they could live without them. And it was funny. We had a lot of clients who were still in a few at that point start to divest themselves of them, start to drop them because they realized they could live without them because they did for 1 to 2 or 3 months. They had been living without them. And this boils back to what is the basic problem with PPOs and HMOs, of course, but let's just talk PPOs again here today. And what happens when you actually drop them? Let's first just look at the numbers. If I go and I market for new patients, I think the current numbers on new patient marketing is there's a term acquisition cost. You may have heard this before. In other words, how many dollars do I have to spend to get a new patient sitting in the chair getting their initial exam? The average acquisition cost for postcard marketing is about $350 per new patient. Now you can improve that if your receptionist has better skills, if you ask for referrals. For example, if you spent $350 to get me in your practice and then you asked me for a referral and I refer my wife, you just lowered your acquisition cost to $175 for each of us. You follow? So that's the acquisition cost. How much you spent. If I spend $10,000 and I get 10 new patients, I spend $1,000 a new patient. Anyway, the acquisition cost for postcards is about $350. Google pay-per-click is $422. Again, Google pay-per-click, that number can be brought down by doing things a little more, I hate to use this word, smartly, probably wrong word. But, I've seen people who do pay-per-click and they're advertising 4 towns away for cosmetic dentistry at 3 a.m, on a Sunday. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, but you have that acquisition cost. So let's take me, for example. You advertised to bring me in your practice and you spent $350 to get me in with a postcard. And now you present whatever treatment I need and I accept it. Let's say I don't have a PPO. I have insurance or I'm just paying cash. You spent that $350 once to get me in. And, as long as you work to keep me, that was a good investment. Because that's another area we're going to be talking about on later podcasts, how doctors don't work to keep people in the practice. That's a whole other thing. But with a PPO, you're paying that acquisition cost every single time the patient comes in. And think about this for a second. So let's say you're writing off the average PPO, let's say is a 30% write-off. So your pro fee is, $150. So what's 30% of that? $45. So you're writing off $45 every time a person comes in for a pro fee. And then any other work you're doing some composites, you're writing off 30%. Every time you treat this patient, you're paying this acquisition cost again and again and again and again and again. If your practice consists entirely of PPOs with a 30% write-off and you're collecting $100 a month, that means at full fee, you'd be collecting close to $145,000 per month if you're at a 30% write-off. Like, think about this for a second. That's almost $500,000 a year. So then the question becomes, how do you get out? I mean, obviously we know why people end up in, they want to end up on the website. So your name's on the website, but a lot of people are just scared. They're afraid that if they were out, patients will just leave them in droves and they're only there for the insurance. And I can tell you that is so not true. It is absolutely the farthest thing from the truth. I can't bang my desk too hard or I mess up the podcast here. We did a bit of a study with our clients, and keep in mind, our clients have it together a bit. They market, they're good at communicating, they're organized, etc. But we did a bit of a study on clients dropping PPOs just to find out what was the average drop-off rate of patients. How many patients left the practice? And what we found was it was anywhere from 28 to 32%. You could say an average of 30. 28% was if they handled things correctly. 32% was if they handled things horribly. They didn't tell anybody and the patient found out they dropped the plan when they showed up. Most of our clients don't do that. They handle it well. But I've seen it where somebody just gets a wild hair. I'm dropping the plans. And then, patient shows up. Okay, I'm here for my cleaning. Oh, we don't accept your insurance anymore. We'll see you in a minute. The patient's all ticked off, right? So there's a right and a wrong way to go about doing it. But it was 28 to 32%. So roughly less than a third. So if you have 1,000 patients in a particular plan, Delta, Aetna, MetLife, whatever it is, if you drop that PPO, you can bank on losing about 300 of them. Now, I've seen it cut down quite a bit, actually, believe it or not, actually quite a lot. But you might think, wow, if I lose 300 patients or a third of my practice or 30% of my practice, that's a horrible situation. But let's do some basic math for a second. So let's say I have 3 patients who are in a plan and they all need crowns. And my crown fee in this plan is $800. This is not uncommon. But my full fee for a crown is $1,400. So do this math for a second. Crown fee $800 in the plan. Crown fee, if you're driving in your car, don't write this down. Crown fee $800 in the plan. Full fee, $1,400. I have 3 patients who need crowns. If I do all 3 crowns in the plan, that's $2,400. Right? 3 times 800, 2,400. If I drop the plan and I still have these 3 patients who need a crown, I no longer accept their plan and I lose 30%, or let's say in this case, I lose one of them. It's actually a little higher than 30%. It's 33%. 2 decide to stay with the practice. 1 leaves the practice. Now I'm doing 2 crowns at full fee, $1,400. That's $2,800. So again, I do 3 crowns at $800. Or I do 2 crowns at $1,400. So again, I don't want to have this just devolve back to the dollars because that's not what this is about. But I want you to just look at the basics on this. If you're doing a crown on a patient that you're only charging $800, it's not like the lab gives you a discount for that crown, or your dental assistant writes off 30% of their hourly wage, or your landlord writes off 30% of your rent because, you're seeing PPO patients. Ultimately, the person that this is hitting the hardest is you, the doctor, the business owner. So from a business perspective, it makes sense. You lower your labor costs, you lower your material costs, and you're not running around like crazy trying to see patients in order to meet your monthly overhead. You're actually doing, and here's the truth, most patients really appreciate high quality care, and to leave their dentist is a really big deal. Leaving their office, there are people who, they really don't want to leave your practice. So most people will stick. Most people will stick with the practice. They appreciate that high quality care. And one thing I recommend, and this is it's a website we put up called raisemyfees.com, raisemyfees.com, all one word. And basically what it is, we have a little video from me explaining how this works, and we have a little form called a plan analyzer that you can download. You can take any plan that you're currently participating in, because this is wild. The people that we've run through this, some pretty wild results, just to give you how this works out. We've had them fill this out. You basically take one plan, ABC PPO. And you have to work out, how much you're collecting and from ABC PPO and how many patients are in it. And there's a number of things it asks you. Anyway, what it does at the bottom is it tells you how many patients, how many new patients you would have to get if you lost a certain amount of these planned patients. So if you lost 75% of the planned patients, you need this many new patients. If you lost 50%, you'd need this many. If you lost 30%, you'd need this many. Well, here's what's funny. What we found is when you do these numbers, and I'll try to explain this. It's so much easier to show this, but I'll explain this. When you do these numbers and you do these plans up against your regular fees, it shows you that if you were to lose 30% of your PPO patients, you would need 0 new patients to maintain your level of collections. I'll say that again. You would need 0 new patients, no new patients. Sometimes you could lose some people and still collect the same amount of money. It's pretty wild. It's pretty wild. And then let's talk about profitability for a second. So again, I'm collecting the same amount. My labor costs have gone down. My material costs have gone down, doing less, impressions. Well, you might be doing scans, but my labor costs have gone down. My material costs have gone down. There's more profit. So I'm working less and making more and enjoying what I'm doing with people who really appreciate the treatment that I'm providing for them. It's actually kind of a good deal. Yeah, I definitely think you don't want to do that. But anyway, I'd recommend if you're really serious about wanting to get out of some PPOs, go to raisemyfees.com and check it out. Run it through the plan analyzer a bit. You can call us. We can help you work your way through it so you can kind of see if this is something that you'd want to do. I mean, sometimes it's a bit of a big decision. You also want to make sure you're getting a good flow of new patients into the practice, because that can be a bit freaky if you're just losing people. But it can be done. But let's take a look at how did doctors get themselves, especially dentists, medical doctors in a way worse mess than you're in. But how did dentists get themselves into this mess in the first place? It really comes back to, you could say lack of business acumen, but I disagree with that description. You got an education to become a healthcare provider. You have an education, which, education is not just book learning or classroom learning. There's practical experience too. That's part of your education. But you got an education as a healthcare provider, but you were never educated on how to run a business. And that's essentially what you're doing. I know there's this idealized view when you're in dental school, what it's going to look like when you get out. But then you get out and you got staff problems. And, what do you do to maintain your overhead or keep your overhead from going out of control? And what do you do about this? And how do you market? Why won't patients just do what I tell them? So when it comes to new patients, you need patients. So there's this idea it's better to have a butt in the seat than to have an empty seat. And that's not always necessarily true. So you join a bunch of PPOs. And the schedule isn't set up so that it's efficient, and you can't find the right staff. So you're running inefficiently, labor costs get out of control, and you don't know how to market. But this is what puts you in that position. So instead of being able to conquer it, you feel like you're the victim of it. So, I normally try not to, this podcast is about education, something you can do. In this case, the thing that I'm recommending you do is check out that plan analyzer, see if this applies to your office. That's something you can do to improve today. But one thing I would recommend that you check out is check out the MGE New Patient Workshop. That will actually teach you how to get more fee-for-service new patients, which I know you may not believe is possible. I know, as I explained earlier, but it really does make a huge difference. I've seen so many people go through this. You could see you probably know people who have done it. It also comes with a full money back guarantee. If you don't get exactly what you want out of it, you can get a refund for up to 6 months after you've done the course. Makes a huge difference. And again, if you're not quite sure what's going on in your practice, or you have questions about the plan analyzer, we can do a free consultation with you. And you can find out about all this. You can call us at 800-640-1140, or you can go to our website, mgeonline.com. All right, folks, that's all I have for this week. It was fun. I had fun. I hope you had fun. It's definitely something I think a lot of people are reevaluating at this point in time, like how important is it to participate? And I actually really I think it's really cool because MGE is all about helping doctors maintain a private practice. And I really like the direction this is going. It was going the wrong direction for so long. Now it's going the right way. So again, I hope this helps, and we'll see you at the next episode.